the second podcast of the year. What's our big announcement, May?
So we are launching podcasts as part of the She Builds Tech Skills. So as all of you know, by the way, I just pressed live. So if you missed the first bit, so as all of you know, She Built Tech Skill is all about women in technologies, inclusion, and bringing all the women together to learn more about the cloud technology, have a chat about, what is happening in the technology space, showcase the awesome demo that you guys have been doing. So that's all about She Built Tech Skills, and we've been streaming live monthly, like today, and now we're expanding to podcasts. So how exciting is that? So stay tuned on our podcast first episode. And when is it going to be, Mai?
It will be available on a Monday for the US audiences, and it'll be a Tuesday for Australian audiences, I believe.
Awesome.
Yes, so it'll be available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Radio Public, Art19. Shout out to the Art19 folks here at Amazon, and all your any major podcast platforms you can find. So just search for AWS She Builds Tech Skills, and we'll be there.
Awesome. That's so exciting. So we've been doing this for nearly a year and a half, since 2001, like end of 2001, and this is our 17th episode. So it is great to see the program growing, the community members growing, like yourself today, and we are expanding the podcast. So if you can't tune in live, you can tune in on a podcast when you're going for a walk or when you're driving. So there you go. So we also have some big events happening in a couple of months. And Mai, do you want to kick off with the first one?
Sure. So AWS ANZ Summit 2023 is happening on the 4th of April. So seats are selling fast. So places are selling fast. So it's not they have to pay for anything. It's free to attend.
It's free education.
Free education.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's an educational conference. So for those who want to dive deep into certain things, May and I will be there. So even if you wanted to chat to us about career progression, etc., we'll be there to help you out. But there'll be lots of amazing sessions, including sessions for builders and sessions for the exec track as well. And those are selling out really quickly too. So make sure you register so you can secure a spot. And there will be a link in the chat soonish.
Yeah, I just posted a link in the chat, as you said. So I'm just going to put it here as well. So go and check out the link, check out the agenda. Like Mai mentioned, build track, you have got builders sessions, you have got, the transformations and migrations. So any sessions, any flavor that you want to go and check it out, have a look at the agenda, browse around, but make sure you register on the event page. So that is the first event. And we also got virtual event as well. So here is the link. So we're just sharing the first kickoff, a few events that's upcoming, so you don't miss out on any of the events that is focusing on the developers and getting that hands-on experience that hosted by AWS. So the second event is happening on the online event. It's a webinar series around machine learning, AI, ML, and machine learning. So have a look around the agenda page. It's a full pack agenda on the webinar series. So go and check it out. This one's easy because you can register online and then you can join in if you're working from home, join from home. If you're in the office, you can join from anywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome, May. And more programs coming your way as well. I just wanted to send a shout out to Dean O'Reilly and Keelan, who leads the Inclusion Ambassador Program. So AWS She Builds Tech Skills is all about inclusion as well. So big shout out to those in the community who are championing inclusion all around the world.
Absolutely. Great call out, Mai. So it's really important that we're doing this in the community and expanding and growing the community and making sure that we include everyone, and then have this community growing as well. So thank you everyone for, putting all your effort and joining the community. All right. So we've talked about events. We did the big announcement. What is in store for this month?
Yes, so this month we have our lovely guest, Anjana. She's from professional services, AWS professional services, but we'll leave the intro to Anjana, and she's here to talk about all the great things about containers and Kubernetes
How
and
exciting.
on EKS and Blueprints, but we won't spoil the fun. We'll let Anjana talk about it. So welcome, Anjana.
Thank you, May and Mai, and hello to everyone who is listening.
Welcome, Anjana. Thank you for joining us. We have got about quite a number of audience on the live stream. So anyone's on the live stream, say hi, let us know where you are joining us from. Myself and Anjana are from Sydney, and Mai, you are from?
Up in Queensland. So
Up in Queensland, the
up in
sunshine.
Queensland.
Living the dream.
Living exactly. So, Anjana, let's get started with a little bit about yourself, like who you are, what you do at AWS.
Sure. So I'm a senior cloud architect with AWS. I've been with AWS for around 2.5 years now. I'm part of a team called AWS Professional Services. In professional services, we are like a global team of experts who are working with customers, AWS customers every day, and working closely with them to execute their execute cloud initiatives. We guide them with their cloud adoption journey and help them with their strategic business outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So how long have you been with AWS?
2.5 years now.
Right, and you've been cloud architect for 2.5 years,
Correct.
and I'm just gonna throw a question at you. So you're solutions architect. This question come up quite often. Solutions architect and the cloud architect. So, give us 2 minutes of what do you think of the difference between these two roles?
Sure. So solutions architects are general or account solutions architects, as we like to call ourselves, are quite close to the customer on a day-to-day basis. So we help customers on solutioning for their day-to-day. I guess we still deal with their projects, but we're more around, what's the future state? If we talk about conventional terms, it's more of a pre-sales type of role.
Yeah.
Whereas cloud architects, what I understand it to be, is more of a delivery focused role where
Yes.
you'll be helping the customer implement the solutions.
Exactly. Yes, May. Just to add on to that, yeah, we come in for a specific initiative help the customer deliver that initiative. But we closely work with solution architects before we engage with the customer, because solution architects that have a better understanding of the entire landscape or entire customer landscape, because they have been with the customer and they look at the future roadmaps and everything. So, in order to align our solutions with customer roadmap and to design what is best for the customer, we usually work closely with solution architects to understand the customer landscape before we actually start the initiative. So yes,
That's a
yeah.
great explanation. And just want to give a shout out to Anjana Micken from your professional service team. Oh, so you got a fan there. So I just put in a link. What is professional service? The team that is helping customer to deliver the project. That, if that's right to say. And we also got Peter. I just want to give a shout out to Peter
Yeah.
Hansons. Hello, Peter. We have met a few times virtually, in person, but great to see you joining the show.
Nice to see you again. And Francisco as well. I saw Peter and Francisco last week at the data engineering
Did you?
engineers meetup.
Oh,
So I did a reInvent
wow.
recap there. So shout out
There
to
you
that
go.
community as well.
and and Michelle is one of our practice managers within AWS, and she is one of the biggest proponents of women in tech. So kudos to her as well. So hello, Michelle.
Awesome, Michelle. You got to come to our show next time. All right. So like I want to shift the questions a little bit, and Jenna, to your career. You've been in the tech for quite a while. So talk us through how you get into the industry, and what are your highlights during your journey?
Sure, yeah. So when I was in school, like any other Asian kid, or I would say Asian nerdy kid, I wanted to become an astronaut. But when I got my glasses, I think someone in the family told me I need to have a perfect vision to become an astronaut. Probably it might be my mom, because she would have been scared because she will lose me to space, or I might never come back. So I didn't think much about it, and I thought, okay, so if not astronaut, what can I do? So then I slowly transitioned my dream to become a scientist and work for a space research organization and stay on Earth, basically. So and that dream continued up until my engineering. So during my final year in engineering, my final year project was to program a temperature sensor for a satellite. And I briefly interned with one of the scientists in Indian Space Research Organization, which is equivalent of NASA. So I briefly interned with them for a couple of months to do the project, and it was an exciting opportunity. So when I thought all my space dreams were coming true, that's when through an on-campus recruitment, I got a job as a software engineer with one of the big multinational companies in India. And it was too difficult to reject that offer, and I took in, and here I am as a software engineer.
No, that's amazing. So from the space programs, and then be a software engineer, and now cloud architect. You're still in the
Yes.
space. You're
Yeah,
still in
still
the
in the
cloud.
space, still in the cloud, very close up there. So if I talk about my further journey, so I've been in the industry for 15 years now. So I started my career journey as a Java developer, like a web application developer, mainly using Java. And a few years back, I got an amazing opportunity to work with an application team who were already working in that DevOps model. I mean, at that time, DevOps was not even popular. We didn't even know what DevOps was, but this team was already operating in the DevOps model, developing our own applications, and operating and maintaining the application ourselves. So we used to develop as well as deploy these applications to the production, and we were responsible for supporting it in production. And I went through that pain of people sitting through at night to do the deployments. So our team as a whole, we started thinking about, okay, how we can make this process easy. And that's where when I started writing Ansible scripts, and my role slowly transitioned into being a DevOps person. So and then since I got curious about AWS, and I started exploring the AWS, and helped the team to migrate some of their applications to a cloud. And about 2.5 years back, I got an opportunity to work with AWS, to work with the mothership, and here I am.
That's really amazing. So like you got into the role without actually knowing that there is a role, and it becomes like a DevOps become a big thing these days,
Yeah.
right? Like every
Yes. Yeah.
organizations are have adapted into DevOps, but there are still a lot of customers and organizations trying to migrate into a modern DevOps, the framework and architecture design. So that's really impressive. You've got
Yes.
ProServe team as well. Shilpa from CA from
Hi,
AWS
Shilpa.
ProServe. So that's amazing to see the team supporting, and Jana.
Now,
I'm
speaking
really
of
appreciative of them.
we've got a
Yes,
thanks up
yeah,
there.
AWS helps NASA too, and my dreams. I'm still persisting with my dreams. One day, Blue Origin or the
Blue
AWS
Origin.
Space
There you
Wing.
go.
That's the
Yeah.
next job. Now, now speaking of DevOps, you're here to talk about EKS Blueprints. Now, before we jump into the EKS Blueprints side of the fence, what for the folks that are on today that may not know much about containers, can you start off with the concept of why do we use containers? Why do we need containers?
Yeah, sure. So if you think about the word containers in plain English, it is something that holds stuff together, right? Like a shipping container, which holds a lot of stuff together. So if you put that in a software context, we have developers creating applications, building applications every day in their laptop. And to make these applications work, they need a lot of software, a lot of third party dependencies and binaries that they need to they set up their laptop so that their application can work properly. So now think about taking this application from their laptop into into a actual physical server for the organization. So you have to take it through different environments like dev, test, and production. So and you in order to set all these environments up, you have to redeploy all these dependencies, third party libraries, and binaries along with your application so that everything can work together. So that's where now imagine a situation if you can put all these things together in a container that we call as an image, a container image, and then we can ship that image and progress that through different environments. So wouldn't that be the best scenario? So that's where containers come in. So it helps developers to build their applications and deploy their applications quickly and help organizations to move in a faster, in an agile way, and go to market much faster.
Right. So basically, you're saying that it helps developers
Yeah.
innovate, right, on behalf of the
Yeah.
organization. Make sure
And
that the application is portable and it's consistent across all the environments.
exactly. And you never come into a situation where this works in my laptop, but it doesn't work in production. So that's where we can avoid such situations because everything is packaged, all the dependencies are packaged, and it is portable and progress. You can progress the same package through multiple environments. Just give me a second. Sorry, my laptop is running out of charge. I just have to plug it in. Give me a second.
That's that's
Yeah.
all good.
So, May, I'll ask you a question while and Janice hooking up a container. Do your
Yes.
customers use containers much?
Well, I have a lot of customers who use containers. There are a customer who want to migrate from from their existing monolith applications or legacy application and moving into a containerized package application. So it has been a lot of conversations. Containers has been a big topic, especially around EKS like Kubernetes. So I think we should ask the audience about, has anyone heard of Kubernetes or anyone using Kubernetes? Like, is anyone using Kubernetes in the chat? Just drop it in the chat.
Or any kind of container
And I'm back,
orchestrator?
folks. Yeah.
Mm,
Awesome.
that's right.
Now, while we're waiting, we'll go back to Anjana.
I'm back.
Awesome. Now, so we talked about containers and the benefits of using containers in, whether you're a developer or for your organization. Now, why do we need to have, what is Amazon EKS, right? For
Okay.
those audience that don't know what EKS is.
Right. So probably before going into EKS, I will quickly touch upon what Kubernetes is.
Oh, sorry.
And then then it'll be easier to transition into EKS. Containers. When I spoke about containers, it manages just one single application, right? It's a package. We spoke about a developer building an application and then packaging that application as a container. But if we think about that in an organization level or enterprise level, there will be hundreds or thousands of applications running. Or if you think about a microservice architecture, I mean, it's not good to have a monolithic architecture where there is tight coupling between services. So it's always good to go towards a microservice architecture where you have different functionalities split into individual services so that you can manage them separately. So even a single application might have multiple services, and you can then package these services to individual containers. Then there are hundreds and thousands of applications, so more containers. So now think about managing all these hundreds and thousands of containers manually in an organization, and it will get overwhelming very quickly, right? So how about you? So Kubernetes is nothing but a orchestrating mechanism, something that manages your containers together. So it takes care of scheduling your containers onto physical servers. It makes sure that all these containers are running healthy, up and running. It also helps you with scaling your containers based on the needs. So it does a lot of things. So it is an orchestrator for your containers, and it makes sure that it makes your job easy in managing your container platform, managing all your containers. So that's what Kubernetes is.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Now,
yeah.
on to the next concept. I just want to give a shout out to Hao Fei from the ProServe team, another fan from
Yeah.
ProServe saying hi.
Hi, Hafe.
And there are a couple of questions here as well before we move on to the next topic.
Sure.
So, containers versus microservices, what's the difference?
So microservices is like a design pattern, like where you say if you have a monolithic application which you are having, like an application for a shopping cart. So you are doing different things there, right? So you have a list of things that you want to sell. Then you have a shopping cart where you can add what you want to buy, and then you can place your order. So that's a different service. Placing the order is a different functionality of your application. And then managing your profile itself is a different functionality of that application. So if you think about holistically, you have got multiple services within your application. And if you package all of them as a single application, and if you want to make a change on one specific module, you will be impacting your entire application. So it's usually good to split all these individual functionalities of your application to independent services so that one is not impacting the other. You can easily make changes, deploy changes quickly. So that's what is a microservice architecture means. So now you have broken up your applications to 3 or 4 individual services. So they themselves are a single unit which you can then deploy as their own, as its own containers. So container is a way of how you manage your single service and deploy it across different environments.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thanks for that intricate explanation. And May, do your customers use microservices architecture patterns?
Yeah, it's I have to say it's one of the most I guess it depends on the customer, but with my customer, it is pretty popular in the microservices, and it's just making like Anjana says, just make things easier in a way. Things are not depending; they can scale independently. They can make changes independently, and the team who is managing it has more autonomy on things that they want to deploy, new features, bug fixes. They're not relying on each other in that sense. So has a big improvement in the agility from the team culture perspective. So yeah, we have got quite a number of questions there. And before we jump on, Dale from AWS, again from the ProServe, you've got a very strong ProServe team on the line. That's amazing.
Thank you, ProServe team, for all your support. I'm so happy.
There's another question. I think this is very interesting. Why is Kubernetes also known as K8? So when
Oh,
you type, you can write it like K8 on the command line as well. And that why does it call K8?
probably number of letters in the word Kubernetes. So shortened it as K8.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
There you are, fan fart. Yeah. Cool. Um, the Wami project. Happy birthday,
Happy
Wami.
birthday, Wami.
Happy birthday, Wormy.
That's a really cute cat, I have to say.
Yes.
All right. So we talk about containers, and we talk about Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
So now, what taking to the next level? Let's talk about EKS and
Yes.
what is EKS and
Yeah.
how do we use in the container journey for the customers?
Sure. So when I spoke about Kubernetes, I spoke about a lot of things. Like Kubernetes has a big responsibility of managing and orchestrating all your containers. So as I said before, it has to schedule your containers onto the physical servers. It has to make sure that it is utilizing the space in the physical servers effectively. It has to make sure that all your containers are healthy and up and running. It has to take care of the scaling of your container. So it has a lot of responsibility. So if you think about that, the it has to be complex, right? The
Mm,
technology itself has to be really complex to do everything. So and it is. So I know people they get a bit scared and uncomfortable when they hear the word Kubernetes, because it's a lot of it's sometimes it's very hard to set up by itself. uh,
yeah.
and also Kubernetes have two main concepts. It has a control plane, which is the brain, which does all these functionalities. Like control plane itself has number of components within it, which helps Kubernetes to schedule the containers, to keep sure it always it's always watching all the containers, making sure that they are running healthy. So it has the control plane, or the brain itself has many components in it. And then you have got a data plane, which is just a group of physical servers which are part of the Kubernetes cluster. So Kubernetes uses the data plane to schedule or to place all your containers or to run all your containers. So when you think about setting up a Kubernetes cluster, or even upgrading your Kubernetes cluster, you have to manage all these components. You have to upgrade all these components so that they are all they all stick to a specific version of Kubernetes. They you have to make sure that all these components are working together holistically. So that's where a managed service like EKS,
So
Amazon
that's
EKS
where
come in.
EKS comes in. And
Correct.
so let's say if we take this the containers or EKS into our projects, into the pipeline, what are the things that we should think about as a builders? Or if we're building the containers, like we can't just be building the application. There are a lot of things that need to think about. And could you share something that developers or engineers should think about when they're building
Yeah,
the
sure.
containers app?
Yes. So when you use Amazon EKS to launch a cluster, you are just getting a plain Kubernetes cluster. So Amazon EKS definitely helps you to create that cluster. Like it takes care of your entire control plane. It manages the control plane for you, which definitely makes your life easier. So it makes your life easier in installing a cluster. But if you think about it, can you use this cluster to launch your production workloads? Maybe not, because you need to think about day two operations. How are you going to manage your cluster? So probably I will share a quick slide here just for some visualization.
Sure. And while you're doing that, um, can you talk more about what is day two operations? What does that look like? What does that
Yes.
mean? Yeah.
So day two operations, what I mean by day two operations is taking care of managing your container, monitoring or patching or taking backups of your container, of your Kubernetes environment, or collecting all the logs and metrics from your containers, and thinking about how you will make this cluster reliable, and and thinking about how you scale. Yes, Kubernetes will scale the applications or containers for you, but you have to think about how to configure Kubernetes to make that scaling even possible. So and other thing is security. Last but not the least, it's one of the most important factors. How do you make sure that the containers that is running in your Kubernetes environment are secure? So all these are day two operations. So let me quickly share my screen.
Awesome. Yeah, and this is where I guess the DevOps folks come in and make sure that it's not just a Kubernetes clusters running, that's it, we're just going to leave it there. Rarely it works like that, right? So you've got to make sure that it's maintained.
Yeah.
Got to make sure that it's scaling properly when there's a spike in traffic. I get a lot of customers talking about, how do I scale efficiently?
Yes.
And the question is, are you using the tooling around observability? Are you monitoring your clusters and your application level monitoring as well? Because you can't blame the Kubernetes cluster for everything. So it's just, there's a
It
lot of
should
things
Yes.
to look
sync.
after.
Yeah.
So I'm here. Sorry, I'm not able to see you folks. Yeah, I'm back here. So can you see the screen now? So as I spoke about, so Amazon EKS is just giving you a Kubernetes cluster. Now you have to think about the other day two operations, like as I spoke about before, like how do you monitor and collect metrics for your cluster? How do you deploy your applications onto this cluster? How do you make it more reliable and scalable? And how do you secure all the applications running in your cluster? So you need to add these capabilities to your cluster, and these capabilities are called add-ons in Kubernetes. So and if you look at the CNCF cloud map, CNCF is Cloud Native Computing Foundation. They are like an open source society which who manages all the open source projects which are key for cloud computing technologies. So and there are so many open source projects out there, like add-ons out there available for you to do all these D2 operations. Yes, having choices is good, but sometimes it is overwhelming. So it's too many choices, and how will our customers know which add-ons to pick, how to configure these add-ons? So that's where the complexity comes in. So when if you want to have a Kubernetes environment with all the batteries included, or make it ready for production, you need to think about all these things and add these add-ons and make it robust. Also, if you want to operate your Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes environment as a platform where you want to support multiple teams, then again, you have to think about multi-team considerations where multiple application teams are deploying their applications onto a single platform. So you need to think about the isolation between the applications. How are you making sure that application team is not stepping onto another application team's resources? So there are a lot of multi-team considerations, and you need to think about when you're using this container or Kubernetes cluster as a platform. Last but not the least, you will have multiple environments, right? Will have a dev environment, test environment, and production environment. So you need to deploy your Kubernetes cluster or Amazon EKS cluster with all the batteries included, with all its configurations, from a lower from dev environment to test to production, from through all these environments in a automated way. So you're probably using a pipeline. So so now, as you said, there will be operations team thinking about, or a platform team thinking about all these things. But again, it is work for them. So it's a lot of work doing all this and making your cluster production ready. So
Yeah. So what you're saying is undifferentiating, you're taking away the undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? And so this is where
exactly
the
the right
EKS
word.
blueprint.
Yes, blueprints come in. Yes. So
I have one question from the audience. Sorry to interrupt. There is one question. Tell me more about Gatekeeper.
do you want to go into May? Do you want to take that question?
Um,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
you can explain more about Kubernetes than I do.
um, gatekeeper is, as the word suggests, it's a gatekeeper, right?
Mm,
It controls all the policies that you want to apply to your Kubernetes cluster. For example, organizations will have different security guardrails they want to apply on your Kubernetes platform. So with gatekeeper, they can come up with all these policies and configure all these policies and then deploy as an add-on to your Kubernetes cluster. So how many clusters you spin up, if there is a gatekeeper with all the policies defined in it deployed into your cluster will be compliant with all the security guardrails within your organization. So that's I put it in a much simple format, but it is complex. And yeah, there's a lot of configuration involved to get it working. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Angela.
Yeah. So Now, taking you deeper into what EKS Blueprints is and how EKS Blueprints will help you set up a production-ready batteries included environment. So, EKS Blueprint is nothing but a collection of. It is an open source, of course. It is a collection of infrastructure as code modules put together so that you can use these code modules there from the open source, and then build a cluster which is enterprise production ready Kubernetes cluster. So as I said, it is written in infrastructure as code. It comes in two flavors, CDK and Terraform. CDK is nothing but a cloud development kit. So it is if you have used Terraform or CloudFormation in the past, you might have realized that it's a bit of a declarative format, but CDK helps you write all this infrastructure as code in a programmatic way. So programmers love it because you can use your programming languages like TypeScript, Node, or Java to write your infrastructure as code script. Now, and also it comes with AWS best practices. It's our perspective guidance on how a production ready Kubernetes cluster should look. So it comes with all the AWS best practices built in, and it is integrated with some of the open source tooling that I was talking about before, the add-ons. So it comes integrated with some of the most popular add-ons available out there, like the class metric server and cluster autoscaler or carpenter, etc. And it is fully extensible and customizable. Given that it is open source, it is available out there in Git. You can go in, request changes and make changes, raise a pull request, and get it approved and merged in. So you can always contribute, and we appreciate your contributions to the project.
So this is like EKS Blueprints is you can use the open source framework to build on your EKS cluster, use this framework to have all these best practices infrastructure as code together, package it
Yeah.
in. And then if you want to customize it, add more add-ons or customize, the configurations or your own custom configs in there, you can do that in the blueprints as well. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's correct. So Blueprint, it is a template. So as the
Yeah.
name suggests, it is a template. So you use that template and then you can pass in the configure. So, and it exposes a lot of configurations. So you
Mm,
can customize it based on your needs and pass the configurations to the template and make it work based upon your needs.
nice. I
So
can't wait to try it out.
yeah, I have a small demo here towards the end.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, so moving on. So EKS Blueprints gives you four important functionalities. Cluster management, which is obvious. So EKS Blueprints help you create an Amazon EKS cluster. There are different. I didn't go much deeper into different compute options provided by Amazon EKS, but if you have questions, we can cover that. With EKS, you can either go with a self-managed node group, like your data plane can be self-managed, or Amazon can manage your EC2 instances and data plane for you, which is managed node groups. And then there is a serverless option as well with Amazon EKS, which is Fargate. So you can choose which compute option you want to go with as part of the cluster management configurations. Also, you can specify which VPC you want to launch this cluster on, because most of the enterprises, when there will be a cloud team managing the provision of AWS accounts and VPCs and everything. So usually these AWS accounts comes with existing VPCs and you might want to reuse them, right? So, and there is also, if you don't provide a VPC ID, the Blueprint will create a VPC for you. So that's cluster management. And then there we have got add-on management. Like this is one of the most important features. Like where for customers who are confused about which add-on to use and or how to configure them, the Blueprints come with a perspective guidance, and it comes bootstrapped with some of the most popular add-ons. So enabling or disabling the add-on is just like flicking a boolean in your configuration. So it's as easy as it is. And also you can override the default configuration of your add-ons using the configurations that the add-on module will expose. Then you have got team
So
management
basically,
where yeah.
Right. I was going to
Yes.
add to the add-on. So basically,
Yeah.
it helps with not having to write your custom Terraform module or code in order to enable those add-ons, right?
Yes,
For
that's
those that,
correct.
yeah.
Yes. And also in the demo, I will show you like how easy it is that configuration to just enable an add-on. And then we have got team management, like where you want to maintain your container platform, container as a platform, like where you want to manage multiple application teams deploying onto your platform. You need to think about isolation between the application teams and their security and the needs. So that can be managed using a namespace, using Kubernetes namespaces. So the blueprint will help you create these individual namespaces for your teams, and you can manage the roles, who have access to that namespace, and the capacity for that namespace, and all that can be configured via EKS Blueprint. Now, last but not the least, workload management. So you have a Kubernetes platform. How do you deploy your workloads or applications onto that platform? So again, Kubernetes, the EKS Blueprints comes with some GitOps tooling options like Argo CD. Argo CD is an example. So okay. Let me explain what GitOps is quickly. So GitOps is a way of using Git as your source of truth for your deployment. So in a Kubernetes context, what Argo CD does is Argo CD is a continuous delivery tool for your Kubernetes environment. So it uses GitOps model, which means it relies on a Git repository. And if you want to deploy Kubernetes resources, you may, I mean, if you have used Kubernetes before, you would do it via manifest files, which are nothing but YAML or JSON format files. And it's a declarative way of creating all your resources in Kubernetes. And if you commit these manifest files into your Git, Argo CD will immediately look at that configuration changes. It will pick the configuration changes and deploy it into your cluster. So you don't have to think about any other pipeline mechanisms like Jenkins or any other pipeline technology or Bamboo or TeamCity to deploy these manifest files. Argo CD is always watching your Git repository, and also it is also watching your cluster. So it compares the state of your live running applications in the cluster. Whatever where there is a sync, things are out of sync, it quickly goes and updates your cluster to a desirable state. So but again, Blueprints comes with Argo CD add-on bootstrap to it, and if you want to enable it, again, flicking a switch in the Boolean, and there you go. So, and also you can configure your Argo CD to point to a particular Git repository as you like, customize it using configurations.
Right.
So
So what I'm getting out of that is that, if you have a Git repo of some sort, if you make a change to the source code or the manifest file, it'll automatically create the infrastructure that's required or the changes required, right? Is that how I'm understanding it right?
sorry, come again, May?
Yeah, so you have your source repo, a Git
Mm-hmm,
repo. If you make a
mm-hmm,
change to your manifest file there, it'll
mm-hmm.
automatically pick up those changes and it'll deploy the infrastructure that you've asked it to deploy
Correct. Yes.
automatically. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it will picks up your manifest files and applies that to your Kubernetes cluster. And but you should have robust. So like any other GitOps model, you should have a robust pull request mechanism where people cannot go in and straight away change the main branch. So so developers go via pull request, make their changes so that someone else reviews it, and then they merge it. And as soon as the merge happens, it picks up the change and applies it to the cluster.
awesome. Thanks for that explanation. Shall we go to the demo? I know we've only got
Yeah.
15 minutes left, so
Yeah, just before the demo, like if customers out there, if they need our assistance in using EKS blueprints or setting up their Kubernetes cluster, there are different channels with which you can reach out to AWS. So AWS professional services, which I'm part of, is one way of doing it. We day in and day out work with our enterprise customers or financial, it's ranging from financial institutions to retail, where we help them them do this. And then you have also a group of AWS specialists, as well as AWS partners, and also container specialists who do from AWS, who can help you with this.
That's really
So
cool. So
yeah,
multiple channels to get get this project delivered quicker. That's
yes,
awesome.
yeah,
What are we
please
going to
reach
see
out.
next? Are we going to
Yeah.
see a demo, or are we going to see something
So
else?
my
What do you have?
so my plan is just to show you how the Git repos will look like and how the code will look like, because we might not have time to launch the cluster and everything to do a live demo. So I will show you the code and how easy it is to configure things, and then there is a workshop link which May and Mai will share afterwards, where you can get your hands dirty and try it out.
Awesome. I'm gonna share a link while you're getting your screen
Yeah,
ready.
sure. Yeah. Yes. So here you can see that. So these are the demo repositories I will be using now. So this is the open source GitHub repository where you have got EKS Blueprints templates. So there is, as I said before, there is a CDK version and a Terraform version. Today I will be demoing, or I will be showing you an example of the Terraform version. And then you have got, this is my Terraform module, where I will be using the code or the modules from the open source EKS blueprints and configuring them or customizing them. So these are different modules within my Terraform workspace. And then,
All right.
because I'm using GitOps here to deploy my workload, as well as some of the add-ons to a cluster. So this is the difference here. You can use Argo CD in two ways. One is deploying all the add-ons that you need to make for operating your cluster. So platform team themselves can use Argo CD to make the cluster platform ready to add all the add-ons using Argo CD. And then the workload teams or application teams can also use Argo CD to deploy the actual applications. Because at the end of the day, Kubernetes doesn't differentiate your add-ons or application. They are all applications for Kubernetes. But add-ons are predefined applications which provide some capabilities to Kubernetes, while applications are custom applications written by the developers. So, and as I said, Argo CD uses Git repos as source of truth. So I have a sample Git repo here, which with a sample workload there, which Argo CD is monitoring. And I also have another Git repo where all the add-ons are have they're present, or all the features which I want to add to my Kubernetes cluster are present, and Argo CD is watching that for deployment. So now
Awesome.
let's
Now,
go
before we
into.
go into that, can we ask an audience a question? So, is anyone using Terraform or CDK at the moment? For doesn't have to
That's
be
a
for this
tough
specific purpose.
question.
Yeah,
CDK or Terraform?
CDK
Um,
Terraform.
there's no right or wrong answer. So drop in the chat, CDK or Terraform.
And we
Um,
definitely don't want to go into a fight or argument about which is better.
we can talk about all day.
All right, it will be a bloodbath here soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do Terraform like 3 or 4 years ago, and
Okay.
that was the choice of tool from my
Yeah.
previous
Yes.
job.
Yep.
And then until I moved to CDK, I've never used CDK before until I joined AWS. It was all Terraform, and then
Okay.
moved to CDK. That was a whole different world for me.
Well,
That's my experience.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. And
there are a
yeah,
few
they are
comments
two different
there.
things, and they have got their own. Oh yeah, CDK here. Right.
Yeah,
Prefer
Terraform.
Terraform.
There you
Yes,
go.
because they're. Yeah, there you go. Team Terraform. So yeah, there are pros and cons to both. So, but
Yeah.
let's focus on EK's blueprints just now, and probably we can have a separate session for this Terraform versus CDK discussion. It will be interesting.
All right, let's go back to the blueprints. What do you
Yeah,
have?
sure. So yes, this is a sample code here. So as you, if you have used Terraform before, you will recognize all these files. So your main.tf is the entry point for your Terraform infrastructure as code application. Then the locals.tf is how you pass in your local variables or configurations, variables to your Terraform modules. Then data.tf is how you uh, uh, download or predefine, or if you want to look up things, you use data.tf. And then outputs is something that if you want to, like after Terraform runs it, it's like similar to CloudFormation outputs. If you want to register your outputs and export some of the outputs after Terraform creates it. So let me jump into main.tf here. So this is the main module, which is again, EKS Blueprints itself is written as modules so that managing it is easy. So the first module, so here, EKS Blueprint, this is the module where I am trying to configure my Amazon EKS cluster. So if you remember my previous slide where EKS Blueprints provides 4 functionalities. The first one was cluster management, which is configuring your Amazon EKS cluster, the most basic thing. So here, let me show you how you can customize the EKS blueprints and pass on your own variables. So here I'm using the open source repository, Terraform EKS blueprint repository, as my starting point. So I'm just importing that, and then I'm passing the overriding some of the configurations. For example, cluster name, you can pass in your cluster name through here. So I have in my locals.tf, I have a name. Sorry, I have a name here. So so it's getting that name and then passing it to my passing it to the blueprints. And then these are the roles. So if you want to access, so as a platform team, you will want to access the cluster. So it helps you create roles in within the cluster. So you, again, you can pass in your role configurations here. Then the next one is the most important thing, your compute option. Like with Amazon EKS, as I mentioned before, there are multiple compute options. Like either you can go with Fargate or managed node group or self-managed node group. And this is how you will specify your compute option, which compute option. So if you want, here I have gone with the managed node group option. And within the managed node group option, I am just specifying what's the name of the node group, what instance type do I want for the data plane, and what is the subnet IDs. There should be somewhere
So
where I,
just a
yeah.
question, Anjana. So
Yeah.
what is Fargate?
So Fargate. So in terms of EKS, Fargate is Amazon's serverless way of doing EKS. So here, your data plane, you will not see any EC2 instances as part of your data plane because, of course, it is serverless. So Amazon EKS will manage that for you behind the scenes, and all you have to do is just deploy your applications to a cluster, and Amazon will completely manage your compute. So you can think about difference between managed node groups and Fargate. In managed node groups, you will still see EC2 instances in your console, but Amazon is taking care of your patching and everything for of those EC2 instances. But with Fargate, you will not even see them. You will see some Fargate profiles within your Amazon EKS console, and each profile will correspond to the each pod you are deploying.
Right. So it takes way more heavy lifting if you use Fargate.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
obviously there are some limitations as well if you
Limitations, yeah,
Fargate.
yeah. So the next question will be why should I use managed node groups versus Fargate if Fargate is taking away more of the heavy listing? So again, there are limitations. Probably if we go into that, there'll be just conscious of time. Probably we can share the links afterwards, and we'll finish the blueprints. So yeah, so this is how you specify your compute options. And also you can specify, yeah, there you go, VPC ID. So if you specify a VPC ID here, again, I'm creating a VPC here just to show this as an example, and I'm referencing that VPC ID. So I'm going with the assumption that I have an existing VPC. If I do not mention this, then the blueprints will create the VPC for you as well, and then launch your cluster on that VPC. So yeah, so that's with cluster management. Now going on to the next one is the team management. Like if you want to have multiple teams. So again, this is how easy to configure EKS blueprints for individual teams. So Team Rika is an example of a named team, or in terms of Kubernetes manages that in namespaces, and then so it will create that namespace for you. It will apply some quotas, which means it will limit how much resource that the specific team is using. So that this is just to make sure that the applications particular application team is not eating away the resources of another team. So um, to limit any accidents. So you can specify quotas here. You can specify your application name. You can even create the role for this particular namespace via all these configurations. You can also again, when Kubernetes creates this namespace, if you want to create certain Kubernetes resources inside these namespaces when you start for the first time, again, you can provide manifest files in a particular format in this directory, and it will pick up those manifest files and deploy that into the namespace for you. So this is how you can configure team management. Now, moving on to the third functionality, which is add-on management, another important one. Okay, again, I'm in this example, I'm writing it as a separate module so that it is easier to manage. And here, you can see that I'm importing the open source blueprints and then overriding the configurations. So I'm passing in the cluster ID where I want to add the add-ons, and then this is as easy as this. As I said, this is okay. I will come back to Argo CD. This is as easy as this. So it comes, as I said, it comes bootstrapped with certain add-ons. So if you want to enable or disable an add-on, you just have to pass in as a boolean. But as I said before, but if you want to override the default version, like versions of these add-ons or default configurations of this add-on, there are configurations exposed and you can override those.
Right. So I see Carpenter in there. So if you wanted to enable Carpenter, you just need to override the default configuration.
Yeah. So this false to true, Carpenter will be deployed to your cluster.
Awesome.
And now, yeah.
A bit of a time check here. We've only got
Yes.
4 minutes, and we definitely don't
Okay.
want to go over.
No.
So let's try to wrap it up here.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's it. So we spoke about cluster management, add-on management, and team management, and finally workload management, which is Argo CD. So I'm enabling Argo. So to start with, I have to enable Argo CD in the cluster. So enabling Argo CD here. And if you want to manage Argo CD, sorry, manage your add-ons with Argo CD, you have to flick this to Boolean. And then if you want to manage Argo CD for your applications, this is how you pass in the configurations. So you pass in your Git repositories. So that's in the locals.tf. Yeah, there you go. You pass in a link to your Git repository, which Argo CD should watch, and it will deploy it for you. So with that, yes, that's a quick demo of how to use your EKS blueprints. So later we can also share you a link to a workshop, and then you can get your hands dirty and try it out.
That's amazing. So it makes it a lot easier in terms of adding additional things, security add-ons, the cluster management, and all these sort of stuff. So I just share a link in the chat. All the viewers out there want to try EKS Blueprints. Go and check it out. If you have any questions on EKS Blueprints, and reach out to Anjana, I'm gonna put her LinkedIn there. So if you have any questions on EKS, just to learn about EKS, or even get some advice on the career journey or professional service per se, reach out to Anjana on our LinkedIn page. And also, as always, we're going to stream monthly, and again in March. I can't believe it is March. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to have another sessions in March on the third week of Thursday every month.
On robotics. So it'll be all about robotics, and our next guest will be from AWS as well, another solutions architect. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we'll be launching our podcast next week. So keep an eye out for all the major podcast platforms out there. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today. And we'll see you next month. And keep on building, and let's nerd out with She Builds Tech Skills.
Thank
See you
you
next
so
time.
much.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.